What's up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the numbers. These are my Draftkings MMA picks for UFC Vegas 34. We have Jared Cannonier going against Kelvin Gastelum, a card that I'm looking forward to. Should be an interesting card from a DraftKings perspective as well. Before we get started, I do want to shout out the winner from the DraftKings contest of 2 weeks ago. Shout out to Don. Was able to get it done. He got first place. I was actually third place. I had Gatto. I had Kopp in there. I needed Bobby Green over Derek Lewis. Would have got it done. But regardless, yeah, shout out to Don. I was able to contact him, get him his money there. And I will be having more contests in the future for sure. So shout out to him. And yeah, so before we get started and get into the video, if you guys can leave a like, also subscribe if you have not yet. That'd be much appreciated. Going live, as always, Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And then live once more on Saturday, 1 hour prior to when the prelims start. As of now, the prelims start, I believe, at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. If that is so, I will be going live at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time there on Saturday. I also want to shout out, if you have not seen it yet, or if you have not heard about it, we're doing a new DraftKings show on Pub Sports Radio. It's me, Uncle Weezy, Z's from Z's MMA, and then also Luke from Sparring with Reality. A very good show. It's nice to get a bunch of different perspectives from a DraftKings standpoint. Go check that out. I'll put the link in the description. Very good DraftKings show. It looked like a lot of people did like it last week, so we're going to keep doing that. And yeah, check that out. The link will be in the description below. But with all that out of the way, I say we get into it, starting with the fight doesn't go to decision lines like always. First, we have Chase Sherman, Parker Porter, minus 230. Fight doesn't go to decision, and it is the most likely to end inside the distance, tied with William Knight and Fabio Charente. But yeah, this fight is something I'm going to want to target for sure. I'm very high on Chase Sherman. You take a look at it, he has a 93% finish rate. I believe he's won all of his fights by knockout outside of one decision. 93% of them by knockout. The guy has a ton of power. He has been knocked out 4 times himself in 22 fights. Parker Porter has been finished in all 5 of his losses. Parker Porter, in 16 fights, he has never lost by decision. I think there's a very good chance that Chase Sherman marches forward, lands some bombs, and gets Porter out of there. But on the flip side, Porter has a solid gas tank. He has solid output. Maybe at 7,000 he can get Sherman out of there late. But I really think it's a solid matchup for Sherman. He's been fighting the much better level competition. He's very tough. I think he's the more durable fighter as well. And I think there's a very good chance that he not only wins this fight but finishes him. So Chase Sherman is somebody I'm very high on this week. As far as Parker Porter, decent pump play. This is a heavyweight fight. They're going to throw bombs. He could catch Sherman, but, I really do like Chase Sherman in this spot. Moving on, we have William Knight going against Fabio Charente. This opened up like something crazy, like at least minus 300. Fight doesn't go to decision, and the money's been coming in on the over, and the fight goes to decision. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it could go the distance, but both these guys are finishers. William Knight, an 89% finish rate, has finished, I believe, all but one of his wins. Fabio Charente, a 71% finish rate himself, all 71% coming by submission. Fabio Charente, no knockouts on his record. But this is a fight where I feel like it could be, like a sneaky fight. I feel like nobody's going to play William Knight at 9,400, especially seeing the line movement. He opened up at something crazy like over minus 300, and he's now minus 183, and I actually expect that to keep closing. So I think it's one of those fights where I think it's going to be very sneaky. I maybe put William Knight in a couple lineups, because if he does win, there's actually probably a good chance he does get a finish. Fabio Charente has been finished in both of his losses, one by knockout against Alexa Kamor, and then one by submission against Alonzo Metafield. So I feel like, as a whole, this fight could be very sneaky. So I'm going to target it for that reason, especially on the William Knight side, 9,400. I'm not going to go crazy on it, but I'm going to be overweight to the field. I feel like he's going to be the lowest owned fighter in that 9K range, because in that 9K range, you have Mark Madsen, you have Chase Sherman, you have guys like that. I do think he will probably be the lowest owned in that range, Brian Kelleher. So for that reason, I will have some William Knight. As far as Fabio Charente, to be honest, I'm not all that interested. I think he's pretty much submission or bust here. I'm not overly high on the guy. The guy's very low volume. He doesn't go for takedowns. Great submission game, but if he's not going to get it there, then I just don't really see the point of playing him. 6,800, maybe worth a couple lineups, but I'm pretty not high on William Knight, but I do think he wins this fight, and I think there's a good chance he wins inside the distance as well. So William Knight for me, pretty much if anything. Next, we have Brian Kelleher going against Domingo Pularte, and I'm very high on Brian Kelleher in this spot. I like him a lot. One of my favorite plays on the card. I think it's one of those fights where there's going to be a huge level of experience. There's going to be a huge level gap of level of competition. You take a look at who Domingo Pularte is fighting, and he's fighting guys like Vince Morales on the Contender Series. He beat him, but in that fight, he was very, very close to getting finished in that first round. Kind of got saved by the bell there. Makes his UFC debut against Felipe Calores and loses. And then he also gets knocked out by Journey Newson in 38 seconds. So as far as Brian Kelleher, this is who he's losing to. He's losing to guys like Ricky Simone, Cody Stamen, and Montel Jackson, John Lineker, Marlon Vera. Those are his 5 losses in the UFC. I think it's a levels fight. I think Brian Kelleher is better, honestly, everywhere. The only thing that concerns me for this one is going to be that Pularte is going to be much bigger. A 10-inch reach advantage kind of scares me a little bit, but I do think Kelleher is the better fighter, and I think he's fought the better competition. I think there's a very good chance he gets a finish as well. Brian Kelleher, an 82% finish rate, 36% by knockout, 45% by submission. Pularte officially has never been finished, but then again, we saw him get knocked out by Journey Newson. That turned into a no contest due to Newson popping for marijuana, I believe, and then he was very, very close to getting finished by Vince Morales. So, yeah, I like Kelleher here quite a bit. As far as Pularte, honestly, I think he's submission or bust, which it could happen. He has finished half his wins by submission, but Brian Kelleher has only been getting submitted by the best guys as of late. He got submitted by Montel Jackson after getting hurt, and he also got submitted by Marlon Vera. Those are his 2 submission losses, but prior to that, he had been submitted 4 times prior to the UFC, and he has been submitted 6 times total. So if you want to take a punt play on Pularte, but I kind of think he's sub or bust in my opinion. And then going down, we have Ramiz Brahimaj going against Sasha Plotnikov. I really like this fight to target. Brahimaj definitely disappointed a lot of people, including me, against Max Griffin in a fight where I thought he was going to come in here. I thought he was going to wrestle early and often. And I thought he was going to score a ton of points. But, watching that fight, I would just sat back shocked because he did not shoot 1 takedown. And if he wants to win this fight, he's going to have to shoot takedowns. And I do think he does. And if he does, I think he makes for a very, very, very good play. On the flip side, if he comes out here with the same game plan as he did against Max Griffin, he's probably going to lose, and he's probably going to score very, very terribly. I mean, he's a decent striker. You got to favor Plotnikov for the striking, but he does have a lot of power. I think he could hurt Plotnikov on the feet, but for him to score well, he's going to have to go to that takedown game. If you watch tape on this guy outside of the UFC, he is very, very good, in terms of his wrestling, in terms of his grappling, and he's actually have a 100% finish rate for Ramiz Brahimaj, 100% finish rate, and that's all by submission. So seeing him not shoot 1 takedown against Max Griffin was extremely weird because he hasn't won any other way. So hopefully he gets back to his roots, gets back to those takedowns. If he does, I think he makes for a very good play. If he doesn't, Sasha Plotnikov probably does finish him late. So definitely a good fight to target there. All right, getting into the core plays, we're starting with Ramiz Brahimaj. I don't want to say risky, but I think there's a ton of upside here. If he goes back to his roots and goes back to that wrestling, I think he puts up a huge score. I'm so impressed with this guy, with his wrestling, with his grappling. I've seen him pick guys up and slam them. Very, very slick submission game. Like I mentioned, a 100% finish rate. All of those by submission. Sasha Plotnikov has never lost by decision. 2 knockout losses for Plotnikov and also 1 submission loss in his last fight against Impa Kasanganay. And man, I think, Brahimaj can either take him down, have a lot of success there. Plotnikov has shown a pretty poor takedown defense. Or, maybe hurt him on the feet, maybe get a club and sub, because Sasha Plotnikov has shown a very bad chin as well. I think it's such a phenomenal fight for Ramiz Brahimaj if he fights smart, if he goes for takedowns. But again, his last fight against Max Griffin, that was kind of a red flag, but I'm going right back to him. He has a good camp, good coaches. Hopefully they set in a game plan of hey, get this down to the mat. If he does, I think he does not only score very well, but I think he scores very, very, very well and gets the job done there. All right, Mark Madsen, 9,100. I'm a little bit iffy on this one in a way because I think he's going to be one of the highest owned fighters on the slate, and for a very good reason. This guy is a absolute phenomenal wrestler. I believe he got like 8 takedowns in his last fight against Austin Hubbard. The dude's averaging 8.33 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 64% takedown accuracy. So right off the bat, it jumps out at you that if he does win this fight, it's going to be because he not only got a couple takedowns, it's because he got a ton of takedowns. This guy goes for takedowns early and often. That's all he does. With that said, he's going to have a cardio disadvantage. He's going to have an experience disadvantage. He's going to have a striking disadvantage, but that wrestling, that wrestling can definitely add up. Those takedowns can add up. That control time can add up. He's the younger fighter by 3 years. Guida, 39 years old, has taken a ton of damage throughout his career, so it's really hard for me to get away from Mark Madsen here. I think there's a very good chance that if he does win, and I think he does win, I think he can score very well. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is Clay Guida has been finished 12 times in his career, 10 of those coming by submission. Madsen has a pretty good guillotine. I can see a guillotine happening, but regardless, Mark Madsen, although he will probably be one of, if not the highest owned fighter on the slate, I think it's for a good reason. He has takedown upside, and that's what you're looking for. And I think if he does win, I think it scores very, very well as well. So, although I do have a few question marks about him in terms of the striking, in terms of the gas tank, I think it's really hard to get away from Mark Madsen this week at 9,100. And to be honest, I don't love the price tag as well. I was kind of hoping he was a little bit cheaper, but still, again, it's hard to get away from him. Next, we have Roosevelt Roberts, 8,400. And yeah, I do like Roberts in this fight quite a bit. I think the striking is actually, pretty close. Bahamondes, I didn't like what I saw from him in his fight against John Makdessi. He had like a 6 or 7 inch height advantage and like a 6 or 7 inch reach advantage in that fight. And he allowed John Makdessi to, hurt him bad and then go on to land like 125 significant strikes against him in that fight. And, he did show a lot of heart. He showed a lot of toughness. But man, did he show that he is very, very hittable, and he has tons of flaws in his striking defense. And I think Roberts can definitely have success not only there, but on the mat. I think there's a huge gap in skill. Bahamondes has been submitted 2 times in half of his losses. He has not been really, tested on the mat as of late. But, you got to think that Roberts is going to want to get this down to the mat. Roberts is a very good grappler. Brown belt in BJJ. I think he's going to have a significant advantage on the mat if he does get it there. And then I think a submission is very live for Roberts as well. But, like I said, on the feet, I got to favor Bahamondes in the striking, but I don't think it's that far off. Bahamondes is going to have a little bit of reach advantage, but he had like a 7-inch reach advantage against John Makdessi, a 36-year-old John Makdessi, and really couldn't take advantage of it. So I like Roberts here, 8,400. I think there's some finish upside. I think there's a submission upside. And I think there's some serious grappling upside for Roberts to get this down to the mat and have some success down there. So I do like Roosevelt Roberts at 8,400. I just think there's going to be a huge gap in skill on the mat, and I think the striking is close. Next, we have Brian Kelleher, 9,000. Talked about it a little bit, but for me, this is a level competition thing. We talked about the losses of both guys. We talked about some of the wins of both guys. And, Brian Kelleher, I really do believe that he is the better fighter everywhere. I think he's the better striker. I think he's the better grappler. I think he's had more experience. I think he's had the better level competition. The only thing that worries me is that 10-inch reach advantage, but Pularte is somebody that really doesn't use that. I don't think he's the best striker. I think, Kelleher has more tools on the feet. I think Kelleher is also the more dangerous grappler, and Pularte's best attribute probably is that grappling. And again, you take a look at who has submitted Brian Kelleher in the UFC. Montel Jackson after hurting him, and then Marlon Vera. No shame in those. He's losing to the top-level guys in the division. And Pularte's losing guys like he's almost losing to Vince Morales. He's losing to guys like Journey Newson. He's losing to guys like that. So I think it's a very good matchup for Brian Kelleher, and I do think there's a very good chance he gets to finish as well. So I do like him at 9K. Next, our GBP plays here, our tournament plays, some plays we're looking for some upside to win some tournaments here. And Chase Sherman, 9,200, somebody that I'm definitely liking. I think there's a very good chance that he not only wins, but gets a finish as well. 93% finish rate, a ton of power, a ton of volume. He goes for it. He goes for the kill. He's going to fight for your money, 9,200 here. I do like him to win. I do like him to finish Parker Porter as well, who, again, has never lost by decision, has been knocked out 3 times. I really question his striking defense, terrible striking defense. Both guys do. But, Parker Porter, I don't think he has the chin to back it up like a Chase Sherman does. Chase Sherman, very tough, very durable, has a ton of heart, and I think he does get the finish here, 9,200. I do like it. First or second round finish for Chase Sherman. Next, we have Malecki, 8,600. I don't hate it. I think she could be kind of a sneaky play. I don't know how many people are going to run the player here, but she did score 100 points against Veronica Macedo. She did score 82 points against Santana in a submission win, and I think it's a pretty solid matchup for her against Josiane Nunez, who, Malecki is going to have a huge, I think it's like a 7-inch reach advantage. I think she's going to have like a 7-inch height advantage as well. And, I watched some tape on Nunez, and I think the advantages in terms of height and reach can be even larger than that. Like, Nunez looks so small for this division, and Malecki is so big for the division, and I can't wait to see weigh-ins. I think there's going to be a huge difference. I think they're going to look not only one, not only two, but I think like 3 weight classes apart. And Nunez looks like she should be fighting at like atom weight, whereas Malecki is huge for 135 pounds. So, just size alone, I think it's enough to get to Malecki, but, she has some decent tools, lots of volume. I think she has a good top game as well. Showed a submission as well in her UFC debut, and if she can get on top of Nunez, being the much bigger fighter, I think she's going to have a lot of success. Nunez, I don't think her takedown defense is good. I don't think her get-up game is good at all. I've seen her stuck on her back against some very questionable competition, so, yeah, I like Malecki here. Don't know how much I'm going to get to, but I think she could be kind of sneaky, and I think if she does win, she can score pretty decently. Next, we have Luis Saldana, 8,300. This is a fight that I do want to target, a fight that I think is going to end inside the distance. Both guys are finishers. Saldana actually has a 93% finish rate, and he only has one decision win, and that last decision win was, in my opinion, a robbery against Jordan Griffin in a fight that I did think he lost. So prior to that, Saldana had finished all of his wins inside the distance, 60% by knockout, 33% by submission. And I think if he wins here, I think it's the same thing. I think this is going to be a war. I think it's going to be one of those fights where they just stand in the middle and bang it to one man falls. Both guys are very exciting. Both guys hit very, very hard. And if Saldana does win, I think it's because he does catch Austin Lingo at some point. On the flip side, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think Austin Lingo's a solid dog play as well. And just overall, I think this is a very interesting fight to target, and a fight that probably does end inside the distance just with the styles of both guys and with how hard both guys do hit. Jared Cannonier, 8,700. I just don't know what I'm going to do with the main event this week. It's tough because, Jared Cannonier, he's not going to go for any takedowns. I think he has maybe two or three takedown attempts, maybe one successful takedown in his UFC career there. And if he does not get a knockout early, does he pay off that 8,700? I'm not so sure he does. Again, he has 5 rounds to work with. He has decent volume. But if he's not knocking out Kelvin Gastelum, who in 24 fights has never been knocked out. In 24 fights, he's only been knocked down by 2 different opponents, one being Israel Adesanya. It's tough because if Jared Cannonier wins this fight by decision, does he pay off the $8,700 price tag? Does he outscore, the guys like Sherman who may get a knockout? Does he outscore a guy like Mark Madsen who's going to go for a lot of takedowns? Does he outscore guys like that? I'm just not so sure. So I don't know what I'm going to do with the main event yet, but it might be a situation where I am underweight to the field on the main event as a whole, because if there's no finish, does it really pay off that price tag, especially for Cannonier, 8,700? If it goes 5 rounds, no knockouts, no knockdowns, I think he's very finish dependent, and hey, maybe he could, because if somebody's going to finish Kelvin Gastelum, I think it's going to be him, but Kelvin Gastelum is as durable as they come, so yeah, I think Cannonier is somebody to definitely look at just in case he does get that early finish, but I don't know. It's tough to really predict a finish for Cannonier with just how durable Kelvin Gastelum is, but it's just something to look at there. And then Vinc Pichel, 8,200, a fight that I'm not overly interested in targeting, but I think if Vinc Pichel does win, it's based off of grappling. Austin Hubbard, not the best takedown defense in the world. I think Pichel is going to have the grappling advantage as well in this fight. We take a look at Vinc Pichel and some of his wins. Had a win over Jim Miller, 82 points. A win over Roosevelt Roberts, 89 points. Win over Brown, 108 points. We have a 116-point win, 115-point win. So when he does win, it looks like his worst win was going to be Silva with 61 points. But other than that, his worst win, 82 points for Jim Miller. So I think he has some upside. I don't think it's like a crazy ceiling. But if he does win, it's going to be based off of takedowns. It's going to be based off of control time. I think he's going to have the grappling advantage. And I will have some Pichel. Just not overly interested in really Pichel or this fight as a whole. But maybe he does get multiple takedowns, lots of control time. Maybe it does add up, but I just don't see this fight finishing either way. So not overly excited about Pichel, but it is another player to note for sure, just based off of how the fight's going to go. Grappling, takedowns, all that good stuff, control time. And then our live dogs, Austin Lingo, 7,900. A fight that I do want to target. I think there's a very good chance that both guys can find a knockout. Austin Lingo has a ton of power in his hands. You take a look at Austin Lingo and all of his finishes, most of them are under 60 seconds. So maybe he could be live for that, 60-second bonus there. He's going to come forward. He's going to fight for your money. He's a very tough guy. He has a ton of power, and I think if he does win, it's probably by knockout. Saldana has been knocked out before. Saldana has been finished in half his losses. So, yeah, I don't mind Lingo. 7,900 I think is a solid play as a dog. If he does win, I think there's some finish upside there. Brandon Royval, 7,300. I think this is going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be a very close competitive fight, my favorite fight on the card. Brandon Royval brings a style that is very tricky. He's very unorthodox. He's very wild. He comes forward for 15 minutes. He'll bring things to the table that Pantoja is probably not used to, and he's very dangerous. A 92% finish rate for Brandon Royval, 25% by knockout, 67% by submission. He's very, very dangerous on the mat. If he can't get it down to the mat, maybe he can find a sub, but Pantoja has never been finished in 28 fights. Pantoja is very durable, no knockout losses, no submission losses. I think Pantoja is like either a brown or black belt himself. So I honestly see this going to decision, but I think it's going to be a very close fight. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I think that Pantoja does slow down as the fight goes on, and with the pace of Royval and the pace that he pushes, I think Royval could steal that third round, and maybe the first 2 rounds are close. If he does win a decision, maybe it does score decent. 7,300, I don't hate it at all. I think is a solid play there as a dog. Kelvin Gastelum at 7,500. 5 rounds to work with. If he does win a decision, it could be enough to get in the optimal lineup, especially if he does mix in takedowns, which I do think he can. I just don't think he'll have a lot of success there. But main event, you got an extra 2 rounds to work with. Some takedown upside, some decent volume. If both of these guys were to win by decision, say if Kelleher won by decision, 8,700, I don't think it would be enough to get in the optimal lineup. But with the $1,200 savings of Kelvin Gastelum, if he were to win a decision, especially with some takedown upside, I think Kelvin Gastelum would then be, maybe optimal at 7,500. So, although I'm picking Kelleher to win, the $1,200 savings does kind of interest me in Kelvin Gastelum. I do think this probably does go decision, and if Kelvin Gastelum does, eke out a close decision, it could not like break the slate, not like score like over 100 points, I don't think, but it could be enough to get on the optimal lineup if he does score, say 80, 85 points, 90 points at 7,500. So in terms of the main event, I'm probably a little bit more interested in the Kelvin Gastelum side just because of the pricing. But as far as a pick, I do like Kelleher to win the fight. And then Sasha Plotnikov is 7,700, a fight that I do want to target here, a fight that I do think is going to finish. If Brahimaj comes in here with a good game plan, a smart game plan, gets the fight down to the mat early and often, I think he rolls. I think he absolutely rolls here. But if he comes in here and fights exactly how he did against Max Griffin, going for 0 takedowns, I think he loses. And I think he gets knocked out as well. So really, it's just up to the game plan of Brahimaj. Is he going to fight smart? Is he not going to fight smart? On top of that, Sasha Plotnikov is going to probably have a cardio advantage as well if he's able to survive the early storm of Brahimaj, really make him work, get up from the takedowns. I think even then, like Plotnikov can find a late finish there. But yeah, 7,700, a fight that I do like targeting. I'm more on the Brahimaj side, but if he does not fight smart, or if he does slow down, that's when Plotnikov could win the fight. So something to look at there. Pump plays, Clay Guida, 7,100. The thing is, Mark Madsen I think is a phenomenal play this week, but there are some question marks. The striking's not there for Madsen. The cardio's not there. If Clay Guida can potentially, steal around in those first 2 rounds, he very well could win the fight. I actually think that Clay Guida has a very, very good chance of winning that 3rd round because Mark Madsen slows down so bad. We saw it not only in the Austin Hubbard fight with Mark Madsen, but fights prior to that where if he just slows down in the 3rd round, rightfully so, like he goes all out for these takedowns, and yes, it's going to be very tiring. So, cardio is going to go to Clay Guida by a significant margin. Experience to Guida by a significant margin. So I actually don't think Guida's an awful play, but I personally think that Mark Madsen does win at least those 2 rounds and getting a lot of takedowns along the way. But if Guida can steal one of those rounds, or maybe if the judges do score, damage over control, and Guida does win a decision, it could score, I don't want to say like great, but it could maybe be enough to get in the optimal lineup at 7,100. So Clay Guida is definitely somebody I'm looking at as far as a pump play goes. And then Parker Porter, 7,000, heavyweight fight. Sherman has been knocked out 4 times before. Porter's probably going to have the cardio advantage here. He's going to maybe have the output advantage, but I personally think he gets knocked out. But if not, maybe he does, push a pace. Maybe Sherman does slow down, and maybe Porter does get him out of there late. Heavyweight fight, maybe he can catch Sherman as well. But I'm personally more on the Sherman side, but it's something to look at for sure as far as heavyweight fights go, and some upside there for a pump play. And then fades, Austin Hubbard. It was really hard to find a fade this week. Nothing really stuck out, but Austin Hubbard, you take a look at it. When he wins, he doesn't typically score well outside of that Max Roskopf fight. And I'm actually picking him to lose. And even if he does win, he has like a 50% finish rate. I don't really see Pichel getting stopped here by Austin Hubbard. But In his win against Bush, he scored 96. Pretty solid there. Against Roscoff, he scored 93. Against Kyle Prepelic, he scored 93 as well. So actually scores decent. He scores decent, but in this fight, he's going to be at a grappling disadvantage, in my opinion, whereas against Kyle Prepelic, he had a grappling advantage. Against Dakota Bush, he had a grappling advantage. Against Max Roscoff kind of, slowed down tremendously, and Austin Hubbard had a huge striking advantage in that fight. So I think the grappling advantage will go to Pichel here, and I do think Pichel does win by decision. And I don't really see Austin Hubbard out-grappling Pichel. I think, if anything, Austin Hubbard can maybe stuff takedowns, keep it on the feet, outstrike Pichel. I just don't really see that scoring well. And then, always a great time to become a member of the Patreon, receive full access to my model. You get the premium projections, the lineup optimizer, the GPP lineup percentages, DraftKings article, access to Discord, and many, many more. Uncle Weezy also does the stats as well. Lots of great stuff on there. $10 a month for the DFS side of things. If you do want the DFS and betting, it's $20 a month. Over 300 members on there. A lot of people do seem to enjoy it, and it really does help me out, and hopefully it helps you guys out as well. So check that out. The link will be in the description. And again, if you guys can check out the new DraftKings show on Pub Sports Radio, the link will be in the description below. A very good show, very sharp guys on there. It's great to see different perspectives for the DraftKings slate as a whole. So check that out. Give us some good feedback if you can. And yeah, we'll see you soon. We'll see you on Friday for the live stream. I do want to point out that Trevin Jones has gotten a new opponent, and I've not gotten to look into that yet. I've saw his opponent, just looking at his record, and looks to be a finisher, so it probably is a fight that we're going to want to target. We'll talk more about that on the Friday live stream, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to look into his opponent. We do not have a salary for his opponent yet, and I'm assuming we're not going to get it for a couple days. So just stay tuned for Friday, and we'll talk more about that then. So that's about it, guys. Good luck, and we will see you on Friday.